Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today we're going to be traveling to Greene County, Pennsylvania again to talk about Crow Rock. I'm Erica.
And I'm Sarah.
Let's get into it. So, this is a really interesting story. I think, again, it just kind of goes back to the fact that Greene County, a small county that I hadn't even heard of before we started doing research, is one of the most haunted places.
Yeah.
And so much of their history involves really strange happenings, I think.
That's really weird because I would think, like Philly is obviously is super haunted, but Greene County, there wasn't a ton there.
Yes.
It's like the Gravity Falls of Pennsylvania.
Yes, exactly. So Crow Rock is an infamous rock in Greene County, and it's named after the attack of the Crow sisters that occurred on May 1st, 1791.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. Our story, though, actually begins in 1773. And I think it's important to note, I wanted to note this, that both stories in this episode contain murders committed by Native Americans.
Oh.
But I think that it's important that we talk about the history between the British and Native Americans because...
Well,
yeah. I don't want to just do the story and not talk about the fact that...
they were provoked.
Yes. One thing our podcast will not do is not discuss that. So, for some history, 1763, the French Indian War had ended. The Native American population were out west by Pittsburgh, by us, and they were kind of hoping to be left alone, and as we know, that did not occur. Not even the British, I guess. The frontiersmen is what they were called.
Yeah. They
kept pushing west, taking advantage of the Native Americans, taking their land, and murdering them and their families, and taking away their homes with no consequence or regard.
Great. We love history.
Yes. So, a lot of things started happening, of course, in response. And in Greene County, some of those things were occurring.
Mm-hmm.
On June 4th, 1773, something called the Spicer Massacre occurred. And William and Lydia Spicer were living with their 5 to 7 children. The reports kind of vary.
Either way, it's a lot.
Yes. And all but 2 children, Elizabeth and William, were killed.
In this massacre?
Yes.
Okay.
Both had gotten out basically of the back door of the house to try and get help, but they were followed by the Native Americans and captured, and actually welcomed into the culture by the individuals who captured them.
So, yeah. Here you can see, it really is anger at the frontiersmen. It's not, the sins of your father type thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth, at some point, was released back into society.
Oh, so they weren't even... The parents weren't killed. They were just taken.
That was one of the children.
Oh.
Elizabeth and William were the children. So Elizabeth was captured but released back into society. But William Spicer never left. So he stayed with them, kind of assimilated into Native American culture.
Well, if that's all you know.
I know. He was pretty young.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, he was the younger of the two. So... that is an important story to note. We're going to leave it there for now, and we're going to move back up to 1791. So there were 4 sisters,
mm-hmm.
Christina, also known as Tina, Susanna, also known as Susan, Elizabeth, also known as Betsy, and Catherine, also known as Katie.
Why do they all have different names? Okay. I guess I get it, Elizabeth, Betsy, Catherine, Katie. I don't know that Christina was a common name at the time.
No. And Susanna, Susan, I guess.
Yeah, I get it.
But for us, for our modern times, those 2 names are different.
Yeah.
Someone named Susan is not named Susanna. So
yeah.
I thought that was interesting. But the reason that I brought that up was because some of their names are engraved on the rock.
Oh.
But it's their nicknames because, Christina was too much to write out, I'm sure.
Lot.
So... they were the daughters of Jacob Crow, and they were all between 10 to 16 years old at the time. And one night they were just walking along a stream, and their older brother Michael actually stopped by them on his way home and asked his youngest sister Christina if she would like a ride home. She said no, and all four of them kept walking. Very shortly after he had gone, they were passing Crow Rock, and several Native Americans and a white man jumped out from behind the rock that we now call Crow Rock and attacked them.
And it's William.
It is. It is. I was going to reveal that later, but yes.
Sorry. No, I'm just paying attention.
No, yes, it's great. So yes, that's the connection. So the white person who jumped out is said to be William Spicer, the person who had assimilated into Native American culture.
Okay.
They carried the four sisters away from the site. Several sources that I read seemed to insinuate that they were originally intending on just capturing them, but at some point had changed their minds and had decided to murder them.
What tribe is it? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
That's the other thing. I could not find in any of the sources any sort of tribe mentioned at all.
Because, different tribes have different, MOs.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And I saw one source, too, that said that there may have been a debate between the Native Americans and Spicer.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the other sources I read was saying that Spicer was one of the murderers, had murdered one of the sisters. So I wonder if his kind of frontiersmen.
Yeah, mentality.
Yes. So Susanna and Elizabeth unfortunately died at the scene. Catherine managed to escape from the initial attack, but unfortunately succumbed to her injuries 3 days later. And Christina was able to break away and run towards their family home up this steep bank. And she was struck by something. One source says that it's a tomahawk, but others say that either she was shot or clubbed by the butt of a gun.
That would mean someone was right behind her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm
Those
not
are
sure.
very different.
Yes, because some reports are saying that the tomahawk was thrown.
Yeah.
And that makes more sense to me. So she was stunned for a second and stayed on the ground. And so her attacker ended up thinking that she had died and turned around. And so she was able to get back up the rest of the hill and climb to safety.
Makes sense.
So like I said, the rock is now engraved with the four sisters' names and was actually moved from the actual site of the attack. I couldn't find any information on why it was moved. I don't know if it was a human that moved it. I don't know if the water levels moved it.
Oh.
I have no clue because it's just a few places had said that it moved. And there's now a memorial plaque that's close to the rock that describes what happened.
So we could go touch the rock.
Yes, we
I
could.
want to do it.
I do too. Okay, so the reason that I talked about the Spicer Massacre was, of course, that it was him. So that's how they are connected. The history of this site alone is just
cool.
So interesting. Yes. And there, of course, are hauntings. First of all, people have said that they've seen spectral figures of Native Americans, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
This one Facebook post that I was reading said that a friend of hers that visited reported seeing a Native American walking down the side of the road as he turned around to drive away from the site.
And, I don't want to make the generalization that there are no Native Americans in Greene County because I've only been there once. However, I would not say that it is common to see Native Americans in Pennsylvania.
No.
So I think that it would make someone do a double take.
Yes, definitely.
Also, depending on what they were wearing. If it's just if it's just a person dressed in modern day clothes, then it would be less alarming.
Right. And that's something else that they did not talk about in the post is how the person knew that it was a Native American.
Right.
We're not sure. Some people have also said that they've seen shadow figures that may represent the specific Native Americans that were a part of the attack, as well as Spicer's ghost. Which is interesting to me because, as we talked about earlier, he was part of an attack where most of his family was murdered. So yeah. I'm a little surprised that he's showing up here.
Well, he really integrated, it sounds like.
That's what I said maybe he was fully assimilated and didn't really relate or feel any connection to his prior family.
Yeah, if he was young, I could see it, or just didn't want to deal with the trauma of processing and feeling close to his family.
Right, which is fair, he was so young.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. People have also said that they have seen an apparition of a little girl. And I saw one source mention that the ghosts of the Crow sisters can be seen. So that makes me think that if people are reporting that they've seen an apparition of one girl, it might be because, multiple people are reporting it and they've come at different times, but all 4 Crow sisters come forward just like one at a time.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I was wondering, I was like, is it a member of his family? Is it one of the Crow sisters?
Right. So that's my theory.
Or because they did like run, it sounds like run and branch apart, maybe it's like at that point in time that they were apart.
That's true. Yes. Interesting enough, I don't even think I noted this down. I just remembered that I read it. But they were apparently speaking to themselves in German because that was their native language. And they knew that the attackers wouldn't understand the language. And they were trying to like come up with a plan.
Wow, that is very smart for a very high intensity situation.
Yes. And they were 10 to 16 years old. I mean, they were young.
Honestly, it is kind of surprising that the 16-year-old was still at the family home, though.
You know, that's a fair point. I did not think about that. That was old then.
Yeah. When you said that they, like, lived at the family home, I was like, she was 16. Which sounds crazy today.
It does. It does. But yeah, that's a really good point. And I didn't see a source that states that they all show up at the same time. Like, I didn't see any reports where they have seen all 4 or 2 or 3 of the sisters. In general, people have heard disembodied screams at the site that kind of echo throughout the trees. Lights and glowing orbs are also present, and I'm assuming this is mostly seen at night if you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as always, we have phantom scratches and hair pulling.
Hair pulling, man.
Yeah. It's always that freaks me out.
So, I feel like hair pulling is way more common. We haven't seen scratches that much.
No.
That's interesting. I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know.
Maybe it's not that deep. Maybe it's just a way to interact.
Right, true. Plus they're in the woods, so you could
true.
think that it's like a stick or something.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So now that's most of the general hauntings. And so I'll get into like the specific investigations that I was looking at. So one individual, Danielle Nyland, wrote an article on this website called the Greene Scene, which I think is about Greene County, which is
cute name. Yeah.
Yes. So she was in a group of 4, and they headed to the rock around 9 p.m. It seems like Fred, one of the investigators that was also there, has visited the site a few times. He said that at one point something had lifted his brother's ponytail during the investigation.
That's like the Nemacolin ghost.
Yes, yes. And it's scarier to me than just hair pulling because it was like lifted in the air, which is interesting. On another, the sound of hoofbeats were heard just before one of his friends was pushed down and appeared to be trampled.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
The only thing I can think of how that's associated is if it was the brother's horse.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was like, maybe he's also stuck here because he feels guilty about leaving them.
Yeah.
So they get into the more of like their present investigation, and Damon, another investigator, says, if anyone is here with us, can you make one of our devices light up? And after that, one of their mag lights lit up, which is crazy. Just like by itself. And
I wonder who it is, though.
Yes.
Because it could be anyone. It could be the Crow sisters. It could be someone from the tribe. It could be William.
Yes.
It could be even the parents, you know?
Yes, because their home was pretty close. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was interesting to me. They said that they got temperature fluctuations from 71 to 65, and it kind of like kept fluctuating back and forth. It seemed to be in response to the questions, but I was like, well, that's not really that far of a fluctuation.
And you're outside.
Yes, at night.
Yeah.
It could be the wind.
Yeah.
I was like, I think that one might have been just nature.
Yeah.
They, at one point, then headed back up towards the memorial plaque, but their mag lights kept going off and pointing them back to the rock.
Oh.
And I don't know how that happened. I don't know if, like, they felt a tug or what, but...
That's crazy.
They said that the lights kept kind of pointing them in the direction of the rock.
That's really weird.
Yeah. Because I don't think we've ever heard of somebody directing somebody.
No. Especially, it almost feels like there's a message or unfinished business then that the spirits want help with if they're directing someone there.
Right.
And I mean, I think a lot of it's about intention with going places, right? And part of the intention of some paranormal investigators, maybe even all, I would generalize enough to say, is to help the spirits, not cause any detriment to them. So maybe they could really sense the intention of the investigators and we're like, oh, you guys are so helpful, please no, turn around, like go back.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and okay, interesting enough, the next investigation that I study, we'll get into that a little bit more. after the whole thing, it was kind of nice to end on the investigation that I did end on. So it was good.
I love when it falls that way.
Yes. And so then in general, this investigation, they said that they did hear some strange, unexplained sounds around them while wandering around the area.
Mm-hmm.
So the other investigation I looked at was from Paranormal Quest, which, yeah.
I do like their channel.
They're so interesting. It was really cool to watch. They post their videos on YouTube. It was really great. The first thing that I've never seen before was they have a music box set up. So if anything passes in front of it, it'll play music.
Oh, it's like activated by like a light, like a laser, trip laser or something?
I think so, yeah.
That's cool.
Because when he walked by it, like it kind of went off, and then he put it down facing the rock, and it went off. And when it went off, the investigator then was like, "Can you step towards me and make it stop?" And after that, it stopped.
That's weird.
Yeah. And then after they set up the technology, so they have like these trigger things on top of the rock that, like, again, if you go near them, they'll beep.
Mm-hmm.
They have a spirit box set up that kind of, again, sounds like the Siri voice. Like, it's not the real voice coming through. And once they set all this stuff up, something came through and said, "What is that?"
That's crazy. We always talk about technology and these spirits.
Yes.
Because in the 1700s, they have no technology,
No.
right? Like, well, electronics, I'll say. So I'm sure they are like, what is all of this?
Yes. And so the investigator explained what it was, and they kept kind of asking questions, and then something came through again and said frightened. Which is
That
sad.
is sad, yeah.
It wasn't clear as to whether they were talking about their experiences when they were alive. They weren't able to identify who it was. And they also weren't sure if they were speaking about now. Like, they were frightened. The ghost was frightened, like, now.
Like, of the investigators?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then they repeatedly just asked whoever was there to, like, touch the tech that they had set up on the rock. And one of them asks, "Would you be willing to touch one of these to show us you're here?" And someone comes through the spirit box and says, "Agreed."
And then it lights up?
No, it never lit up.
Well, maybe it didn't understand the assignment.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, I agree. And they're like, cool, waiting for it to touch something, and it's like, I did it.
Right. I came through.
Yeah.
I said something. So yeah, I was like waiting for it. I was like waiting with bated breath. Like, I was like, but then nothing happened. And I was like, well, all right. So then something comes through the other spirit box that actually does show and sound like the voice that's coming through. And they can hear that it's a young woman's voice, but they're unable to make out what was said. The rock now is up from the trail, like I said, like it got moved. So they kind of went down from the rock to where the trail is. And at that point, one of the investigators says, "What happened to you here?" And something comes through the spirit box and says, "Choked."
Oh.
Which was interesting because I hadn't read anything in the story that had said that had happened. So maybe it's something that just didn't get reported.
Yeah.
They do also try to talk to Spicer at some point, and something comes through the box and says, "Do not."
They're like, "Can we talk to you?" And instead of no, it says, "Do not."
Do
like,
not.
Do not try me.
And then here's the crazy part. One of the questions they asked was like, "Are you watching us right now? Like you were watching the Crow Sisters that day?" And I was like, what a freaking question. Because that is so pointed.
Yeah, for those that are listening, not watching, my eyes went so wide. Like, that is a brave question to ask.
Yes. That's exactly, like, he said that, and I was like, why? What?
Feels like you're stirring up trouble, sir.
That's what I was like, if they are here, that is not the thing to ask.
You are about to get wrecked.
I mean? Yeah. So they go back up to the rock for a final check, and a young woman's voice again comes through, but very quietly. And this is the part that I thought was kind of nice to end on. He and the other investigator both conclude at the end that a lot of stuff that came through here was general, but there wasn't anything specific to the Crow Sisters. There wasn't anything specific to the native population. There wasn't anything specific to Spicer. And so they think maybe something might be there, but they also weren't feeling like anything was there.
Interesting.
So they were like, maybe throughout the years, as paranormal investigators have visited, they've helped the ghost move on.
That's true.
Because,
and then there's just other spirits there, or even a
Yes.
residual haunting.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot about those.
Mhm.
But yes, so that for me was a good thing to end on because I was like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully they have moved on and everybody can rest peacefully.
Mhm.
So now to answer our question, would you visit this place of paranormal activity?
Here's my thing. This whole time I've been thinking, we are 2 females. We just need 2 other females. We're dressing up in 1770s garb. We're walking this trail. Let's see what happens. Top of my head, people that might be interested. Kat of Twice the Terror and Hannah of Horror Hour with the Hannahs.
Yes.
Olivia from No Shelf Control doesn't love haunted stuff, but maybe we could bribe her.
Yes.
Just saying. That's 5 people. We only need 4. We could go. I'm
Yes.
joking about the dressing up part, but I'm not joking about the 4 of us going. Because I was wondering, when you said there was 4 investigators, I was wondering if they were all female or if they were, you know, a mixed group. Because I do wonder if all of us going as females would trigger any additional happenings.
That's true. I did not think about that, but they could be traumatized, of course, by male presence.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think it would be nice to go. That's how I feel. I feel like it would be nice to go and maybe try to communicate with them just to... Again, we don't want to disturb anybody. We don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't know. I feel so terrible for them. I kind of want to communicate and just make sure they're okay.
Right, or if they're not there, who is?
Yes, also that. So overall, very sad, tragic story. And again, I think it's just another example of Greene County being one of the most haunted counties in the state, which is still crazy to me. And it seems like stories like these have just happened. And we can only hope that Paranormal Quest was correct. And as we visit and talk more, many of the ghosts, maybe it will move on.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode about Crow Rock. Tune in next week to see where we go next.
Ooh.